Welcome to the Fire Sprinkler Podcast with Chris Logan. If you're like me, we just don't have time anymore to get all the answers we need to do our job. It doesn't have to be that way. The Mey Fire Toolkit was created to help get your time back. It's the downloadable software that helps you get sprinkler design answers fast. The new system estimator now even lets you estimate hydraulic demands of a system in seconds. Get the highly rated Mey Fire Toolkit that's used by over 300 fire sprinkler companies worldwide. Go to meyerfire.com/podcast for a special offer exclusive to the Fire Sprinkler Podcast listeners. That's meyerfire.com/podcast to get your time back.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this video series of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. And if you're listening to the audio portion, I guess it's not video for you, but check it out on YouTube anyways. This episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is my conversation with Steve Frederick. Steve, how's it going today?
Chris, I couldn't be better, buddy. We got a nice day here in Alberta, Canada, and I'm a guest on my favorite podcast in history. Yeah, in the history of podcasts.
In history, well, that's a little excessive, but thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I've listened to about 5 podcasts in my life, so.
Well, there you go. If anybody out there doesn't know who Steve Frederick is, I mean, the fire protection industry is a pretty small industry, but if you pay attention to things like the NFSA Top Tech competition, when a Canadian wins it, his name's Steve Frederick. What years did you win the Top Tech competition, and which years did you get cheated out on a faulty buzzer potentially?
Are we live on this, Chris?
We are live on this now, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna get you in any trouble, any legal hot water, buddy. So I started participating in Top Tech 2011 in Baltimore when it was still team-based, and I was part of Team Canada West. And then 2015 was the first time it became individual-based, and I won it that year. I lost in 2017 and then won again in 2019 in Nashville.
No legal hot water, absolutely. Like, I'm not going to get in any trouble. I like the people at NFSA. It's just a fun thing to think that every time since it's been individual based. I didn't realize that you won the first individual based event. That's awesome.
I did. I was nervous as heck. My knees were knocking behind the podium, but I managed to pull it out.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then there was a little bit of stuff in 2017. We won't get into it, obviously.
You're not going to get me to admit anything, buddy, because I want to get invited back for 2021.
Invited back to come reclaim the trophy is what you're going to be doing there. Awesome. So the reason I wanted to have you on today is I wanted to talk about kind of the evolution of digital fire protection design, what people are doing right now in sprinkler. I have a lot of fitters, a lot of engineers, a lot of AHJs that listen to the podcast, and I wanted to kind of get into the ins and outs of what goes into creating a good sprinkler design, as well as, I mean, this is very, I do this podcast so that I can learn a lot. So I'm going to pick your brain on Revit and learn as much as I can about using Revit for fire protection design.
Absolutely.
What you've been trying to do is kind of gear yourself to being a Revit fire protection guy, the Revit fire protection guy. We spoke a little bit prior to doing the podcast. You exclusively use Revit for your design right now, correct? That's
correct. Yeah, I made the transition to 100% Revit-based design this year, basically. You know, I got to the situation where I realized the only way I was going to get truly proficient with Revit is if I force myself to do everything in that environment. So to that end, I mean, I've done everything from little 13D jobs up to massive, 5,000 sprinkler university campus buildings.
And that's regardless if the specification indicates that they want Revit or not. You do it Revit, and then you just kind of select your drawings based off your Revit design.
Exactly. Our deliverable is still a 2D PDF. That's what the fitters receive in the field. So yeah, it doesn't look markedly different when it's done by Revit as opposed to, say, an AutoCAD or an AutoSprint. So as far as they're concerned, it's still the same type of drawing that they've been seeing.
Right. So me and you, we were talking a little bit earlier again. We met in 2015 in Banff at the CASA, at one of the CASA events. We're both fairly young in the industry as far as people involved in the industry is concerned. Let's talk a little bit about how much the design industry has evolved in these 6 years, even since we've met, from going to a 2D, the way I like to refer to it is lines and circles, and I'm sure that's the way the fitters refer to it as well, to 3D rendered, take a picture of a pump room, and then you see a pump room when it's done, hopefully fairly accurate.
Sure thing.
So how have you seen that evolution in your designs? I'm still very much 2D, looking to get into 3D, which is another kind of selfish reason I wanted to talk to you about this. But how much of an evolution just in the past 5 years have you seen in sprinkler design?
So for us, it's been gradual. I mean, I was working in auto spring since 2012, so quite a while now. So I've been in the 3D environment since then. I've been producing 3D models, 3D details since then. But this transition from, just the model being contained on my computer to now it's a model in the cloud, and it's kind of shared with the other trades, and I can see their model in a live cloud-based format. That's very new. That's within the last 2-3 years that we've really started to do it that way.
And in doing that, when you say everything's cloud-based, so is everybody working off of the same file? Are changes, if you're working on the file and the HVAC guy's working on the file, will the changes come up live on your screen, or do you have to resave, re-download, etc.?
So Revit contains a button called synchronize, and then when you press that button, that's when it sets the chain in motion, where it'll upload my model to the cloud and it'll pull all their models down from the cloud. So I have to manually do that. But I mean, it is, I could do it every 5 minutes and have their model change every 5 minutes on me if I wanted.
Right. So you're essentially very, very similar to the fitters, if there's any fitters listening. You're doing live changes just like you're doing an installation here, where you could actually see a ductwork being designed that's in your way.
Well, yeah, exactly. And you put a lot of time into not being in their way, and then the next thing you know, you synchronize, and all of a sudden you're punching right through the side of a duct. Sure.
Do you find doing the 3D design has reduced the conflict on job sites, or has it kind of been more of a I saved it this time, you saved it this time, I was there first kind of thing?
It would really depend who you ask. I mean, the fitters will tell you there's just as many clashes with this methodology as there would be with a 2D program, but
Right.
but that's the case. I mean, this concept of BIM, and BIM as a cloud-based collaborative endeavor, is very nascent. I mean, it's new for us, but it's new for the plumbers, it's new for the tin guys, it's new for the electricians. So we're all kind of learning at the same time and trying to figure out the best way forward in order to mitigate these clashes in the field.
And I've been on, I've done designs for many projects out there where going through the mechanical specifications, everybody is BIM coordinated except for fire protection. A lot of fire protection is still submit to AutoCAD 2010.
Absolutely, and that's where we saw a huge opportunity at Rioux Fire Protection. I mean, if we could start helping contractors bid on these jobs where the spec was, everything has to be modeled in 3D, everything has to be uploaded to the cloud. We saw that as a huge opportunity.
Right, and I think we glazed over that because we just got right into the conversation.
Sure.
Yeah, you're working for Rioux Fire, and I've met the guys at different events all the time. Great guys. Is your entire organization working on a Revit-based model entirely as well?
No, I'm the only one.
You're the only, so you're the guy.
Yeah.
I'm the guy. Go ahead.
I'm the guy that gets these crazy ideas in my head and tries to run with them. And I'm just fortunate to have a boss in Michael Rioux that says, hey, if you think you can make a go of this, let her rip, buddy.
Fill your own boots.
Absolutely.
And it seems to be working out pretty good for you right now. I don't think I've ever talked to you when you're looking for work necessarily. I mean, always looking, but never slow.
We've been fortunate in that regard, that's for sure.
Yep. So, okay, so that's what Rioux Fire is doing. If anybody's looking for any BIM, you can reach out to Steve Frederick and find some 3D rendering. You've got a couple drawings that you're going to show us kind of walking through. If you're listening to the audio version, I'm going to explain and describe kind of what I'm looking at on the screen, or you can go over to the YouTube channel and watch the video. Of course, that'd be the way better way. So Steve, why don't you pull up your screen and let's see what you got for us.
Absolutely, Chris. Hey, you might need to remind me how to present again here, buddy. How are we doing now?
There it is. Boom.
Awesome, man. So basically, this is I'm working in Revit right now, Revit 2021. I have the HydroCAD add-on for Revit that I'm using.
Okay, so before we get into really showing some of the stuff, why don't you explain the difference between Revit and how you apply the sprinkler specific items to the drawing? So when you said you have a HydroCAD add-on, what is the HydroCAD add-on and what does that do?
So it's basically the exact same thing it does for AutoCAD. It's just a suite of tools that helps the sprinkler designer be more efficient in what is essentially a generic drafting program, which is what Revit is. So it enables me to use various tools to design a sprinkler system faster and more efficiently than I could if I was just using Revit.
Sure. Okay. Perfect. So when you load up Revit, do you have to I use HydroCAD, the standard HydroCAD. When you load Revit 2020, are all of those toolbars preloaded in once you download them, or do you have to select HydroCAD for Revit and pull all those tools out?
No, they are ready to go, preloaded.
Okay, go ahead. Keep going with your thing.
Right on, right on. So what we have is just a plan view. It's a new building at a university here in Alberta, and basically I've finished my my permit submittal, and now I'm just in the coordination and clash detection stage. So, you know, looking at the job in plan view, there's limited information that can be gathered, but where Revit and BIM really starts to shine is the ability to look at these things in full 3D. All of a sudden, we don't just have 2D lines that represent various things in the building. Now we have full three-dimensional ability to view things. And I mean, you can see what that gives me. It gives me a nightmare, right? Because like on any job, the plumbers have taken up every square inch of space, except where the electricians have hung their cable tray. And of course, they have no fly zones above the cable tray. So various places where we can't be. So basically, my job as a BIM designer and a coordinator is just to go through and make sure that my sprinkler system can be installed to code and it doesn't hit any of the other stuff. So anytime that my model occupies the same space that somebody else's model occupies, it'll show up as a clash, and we'll get a notification that there's a clash and somebody needs to move. And spoiler alert, that somebody is usually me.
That's right. And nobody cares about fire protection until you're on fire.
Bottom of the heap, my friend. So, I mean, here you can see this is just a perfect example, this corridor, right? So, you know, Revit allows me to section off the building into a very small bite-sized piece so I can work on a very small chunk so that I can zoom in on what I'm looking at specifically at that time. And you can see, you know, I can visually confirm that the main fits, that it can be hung, that there's actually a path to get a hanger rod from the pipe up to the concrete deck above. I can, you know, when these weldolets are put on the pipe, I can confirm that in the field, they should be able to slide right up in that gap between the plumbing pipes. And then my sprinklers are within 12 inches from the deck.
Now, is there any software now, or am I just throwing a good idea out there where it can use things like obstruction criteria and things like that to determine if you have sprinklers that are obstructed? Like if you have a ductwork that is installed, say 18 inches horizontal, and it goes straight up to the deck and it goes down 3 feet, you have an upright sprinkler or a pendant sprinkler directly beside it. Is there a software that HydroCAD or any other add-ons that can give you that kind of information based off of the BIM model?
Not to my knowledge. You should probably patent that really quick.
All right, patent pending. Don't.
Right. Yeah. TM. That's what you'll have to say after all of our conversations. TM.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just, I mean, it seems like a good idea. I could see it kind of taking the heavy lifting of sprinkler design away, which, um, I like to think about my stuff, and you don't want to make it so that sprinkler design is too easy for everybody, right? You want the knowledgeable people to be doing the design.
Well, that's just it. And I mean, this is what we talk about when we say that, this meeting between old school sprinkler design knowledge and new school technology,
Yep.
there has to be that handshake. They both still have to meet. I mean, the buzzword in BIM these days in 3D coordination is the term clash free, right? That's what everybody's looking for. It's a clash free model. But
Mhm.
clash free doesn't equal constructible, and it also doesn't equal code compliant. So
Right.
like you just said, you can have a duct that goes right up to the deck. You could have an upright sprinkler a millimeter away from it. And because they're not touching, there's no clash, right? But it's not code compliant. Similarly, you could have, that main you saw me run down the hallway there. If there was a
Mhm.
4-foot duct right above it, I mean, there's no hanger point, right? So it's not
Right.
constructible. So that design knowledge still needs to be present. It can't simply be handed off to a computer user, a Revit operator. There still needs to be that sprinkler design knowledge present.
Right. And I'm glad you explained it that way, where it's designable, but it's not constructible, right?
Precisely. Yeah.
Because you get into that a lot, even with 2D design right now as well. It looked good on paper. How come it's not working now? And that's the joke that I make, even with my fitters now, where I run, I'm also a fitter, so I try not to design anything that I wouldn't want to put in myself
Of
anyways.
course.
But I always make the joke with the guys where I show up on site and they've got 800 feet of 8-inch pipe for an express main to run. And I say, hey, I don't know what's taking you so long. It didn't weigh that much when I was doing it like this,
Oh,
right?
exactly. My
It's
my
not, it
first
only took me this long to do it. It took me 30 seconds to draw this pipeline. Why did it take you 3 days to put it in?
Yeah, well, my first boss always joked that a pencil goes through anything. It's the most powerful tool in sprinklers because it'll go through anything. So I guess the modern equivalent would be the line in AutoCAD or in Revit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll go through everything.
Yeah. It wasn't that heavy when I did it. I did it with one finger.
Yep, one finger, just that easy.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit earlier about trying to get we talked about how the industry has changed from when we started, and we're still fairly young in this, right? We're both in our early 30s.
Hmm.
And when did you start getting into sprinkler design?
2009, I started.
2009. So you started in design, I started fitting. I was a fitter I got my ticket in 2010. So I was an apprentice 2007, and kind of 2012, 2011, 2012 is when I was like, you know what, I'm going to just kind of keep learning about fire protection. I'm not sure if anybody's picked up on this, but I'm kind of a fire protection nerd. So anything that I can do to get more sprinkler knowledge is what I do, right? So I went to Seneca College, did the online program there, and now it's lines and circles all day. But before we started doing design, I'm assuming you started on computers doing sprinkler design.
Absolutely. Yep.
Before that, back in the early 90s, late 80s, and then everything prior to that, everything was hand drawn, pencil to paper. And when you talk to one of those designers now, because my uncle started in that, and he's one of the smartest designers that I know, they remember all of the stuff in their head, all of those drawings. It gets locked in because the art of taking your pen and drawing that line and drawing the sprinkler and drawing the ceiling and all that stuff stays ingrained in your head. Where I pull drawings up that my uncle did in the late 80s, early 90s, and oh well, that was a T-bar ceiling there back 30 years ago. And it's like, why do you know that?
Sure,
Right?
because he put it there.
That's right. I
Yeah,
remember because I drew it. I had to draw every one of those ceiling grid line layouts.
that's right.
Do you find now, because you're doing everything computer, and I won't say it's easier because I mean, the BIM coordination and stuff like that, things do not get easier. Do you find that with BIM drawings, you're kind of going back to that? I remember it because everything was 3D and you're looking at a 3D picture and walking a room. Do you find you got more of a memory of the drawings than when it was all 2D for you?
Very much so. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've put your screen away there. How big of a 3D outline of a fire protection building can you create with that BIM? Can you show, like, can you isolate layers and show, so you've got your 3D layout for the building, and then you delete everything else, and then all you see is the sprinkler from the fire pump from the underground water supply. You show the fire pump and the header and the valves and then the sprinklers and everything.
I will show you, my friend. Absolutely. So this is the
There
entire
it is.
building, the sprinkler system with the building cut away. Yeah. So this is what I export to the general contractor for clash detection and coordination. So
Okay.
this is the model they put into their main model,
Right.
and smash it up with the HVAC model and the electrical and the building itself to see if there's any clashes resulting from it.
So are there match lines somewhere, or does it automatically input that based off of the model?
So Revit operates off a coordinate system, a shared coordinate system. So my model is drawn at exactly the same coordinates that the architectural model was drawn at. So because of that, all I have to do is export it with those coordinates. And when they import it, it's all automatically in the same spot.
Right. Okay. How long did it take you? Like I just asked you for something off the cuff and you whipped that up. How long did it take you to get proficient in this program?
Oh, I would say hundreds of hours, but it's probably in the thousands now.
Right.
And you know, I won't lie, I won't even say proficiency is something that I use to describe where I'm at. I mean, I'm still a learner, I'm an enthusiast, but
Right.
to be truly proficient, you know, it would take even longer, I think, to the case where, you know, when something happens, when an error happens, when something comes up, that I just instantly know what's going on and how to fix it. You know, I've got a little ways to go before I'm at that level.
Is it a lot of YouTube University, or did you take any classes for Revit itself?
So LinkedIn Learning has been my go-to, my secret weapon. I've
Really?
taken every Revit course I could possibly find on LinkedIn Learning, and that's been huge for me.
See, I had the LinkedIn Learning thing, and I just closed it down because I wasn't taking any of the courses.
Okay.
But that's I'm gonna probably re-up that then again, because I just assumed it was like it's a free course essentially. You're gonna get everybody that's willing to put a free course out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's a valid assumption, but some of the courses have been extremely valuable and extremely well done, in my opinion. They've done really good work, really well done, really thorough.
If there's anybody out there that's looking to get into Revit design for fire protection, or need a Revit fire protection system designed, how do they get a hold of you if you're willing to put that out there?
No, absolutely. So we have a LinkedIn page for our company, Rioux Fire Protection. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me there. You can send me a message.
Rioux is spell Rioux just so that it's
Yes, Rioux, as in Xerox.
yep. Our Rioux Fire Protection. I've known you guys for going on 5-6 years now. We've met up at all that. Look at that. That's just incredible.
So
What
that's
he's
the
doing right
building.
now is he's kind of flying around the outside of the building if you're listening to the audio of this. And you can even see the not sonotubes, but the structure of the building going into the underground.
The piles, that's right. So
Yeah.
that's the structural model that I've linked in. Yeah, so they have all of their footings and their foundations, as well as all the steel in the building itself.
How now, looking at this and how quick your computer is, what are you looking at for a machine to get into this?
In order to be able to manipulate a model fairly fast, you're gonna probably want to look at about the $4,000 price point.
Okay.
4 to 5,000, and that's a good graphics card, that's a good fast processor, and a good motherboard.
And what, like, you're talking RAM, you're talking all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
Yes.
at a base price, what do you, or not a base price, but a base level, how much RAM? I'm not a computer guy, but I know RAM is pretty much the heavy lifting in the engine of the computer. So how much RAM at a minimum are you looking to get?
So typically it's as much as you can afford. Autodesk, I think, recommends a minimum of 8 gigabytes, but in reality, you want at least 32.
Right.
64 if you can afford it, and that's to have a model that opens fast, it pans around fast, it is generally fairly efficient to work with.
Awesome. And you're obviously operating off of a desktop computer. You're not running off of a laptop.
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome. See, I started wrapping things up there, but then I had another question pop into my head there. Steve, thanks for coming on today and talking about BIM and Revit design. I have a long way to go before I start looking into this as a everyday thing. But the wheels are spinning as far as what I want to do next with it. I appreciate you coming on. And one more time, if anybody wants to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
Look us up on LinkedIn. Rioux Fire Protection is our page there.
Rioux Fire Protection and Steve Frederick. Steve,
Awesome.
Thanks for coming on again.
It's been a pleasure, Chris. Thanks.
Hey everyone, this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast is done. If you liked this episode, leave a review, comment, or hop over to my social media pages and let me know. Just search Fire Sprinkler Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or LinkedIn. Don't forget to hashtag Fire Sprinkler Podcast and anything you think I should know about or see. If you have any suggestions for future episodes of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast, email info@firesprinklerpodcast.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Take care.